Another person who we love is Aviv, who wanted no particular intro, so this is no particular intro. Off you go, Aviv. Applaud him!
Save some for later. So, I'm Aviv, I'm from Israel. I've been coding since I was 9 years old. And today I want to talk about something that has been part of my mission for the past few years, and that's to create world-class engineering teams. I tell my clients I'm trying to triple impact per engineer. That doesn't mean that you all have to type 3 times as fast. That's not the point. The point, you can try. I'm hearing some people are disappointed. But the point is to create teams that actually do things that we're going to look back for the rest of our careers and be very proud and happy about. Because, you know, as much as we love coding, I'm guessing we also want it to mean something, want to achieve something. So this all goes back to when COVID started, and I was interviewing hundreds and hundreds of tech leaders, asking them a bunch of questions about how they work. I was doing prep work for my book, The Tech Executive Operating System. And I asked almost all of them, among the many questions I asked, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, you look back, how can you tell my team did good or not? What is your metric for whether you have been successful? And the answer I got, like, I don't know, at least 80% of the time was, we delivered what was on the roadmap. And I feel that's like handing out participation awards, because that's essentially what we're supposed to do. What we're getting paid to deliver what we say we're going to deliver. So what's the big whoop? What are we really striving for? And to me, that feels like we're setting a very low bar. And by the way, if delivering what you want to deliver is a problem, you can talk to me later. But I'm guessing many here can do the basic work, right? You're here because you want to work on your craft. You want to get better. The question is, what's the next level? So 80% said, I want to deliver what JIRA tells me I need to deliver. I'm golden. A few others said, we're aiming to deliver high-quality code. We want to have low amounts of tech debt. And I agree, that's better than just aiming for delivering, right? Well, we have some expectations. But still, for me, this feels like I used to work at IBM for a year, and we had this yearly reviews, and you would either miss expectations, meet expectations, or exceed expectations. And for me, this still falls under meeting expectations. It's nothing to be very excited about. And today, I want to talk about how can we move teams to stop saying that low tech debt means that they are good at what they're doing, but actually achieve something that's more important than low tech debt. And to do that, let's first talk about why do we care about tech debt so much? Why are we talking about it all the time? I can talk to dozens of CTOs and VPs a week, and pretty much all of them talk to me about how they're handling their tech debt, or the fact that the tech debt is weighing down on them, or what they have in store this quarter is they actually managed to have a few features handling tech debt to work on. Again, if you have something that needs to be done, do it. But why is that what we're looking for? And I think that, first of all, it comes to the fact that tech debt and refactoring and making things look better, that's the path of least resistance. The way most companies nowadays work for engineers, even the most brilliant engineers, where they can have actually some autonomy and agency and decide, it's all scoped within tech debt, refactoring, some small tasks that no one's going to get too angry if you ask to work on. That's where you get your say. And I think that's a shame, right? Because you're all brilliant. Hopefully you're getting paid good money. Why are you just used to do whatever JIRA told you to do this morning? I'm guessing you can do a bit more. And that's what I want to do. I want to ensure that we make this path of least resistance not the only path that you have. Still, you're going to have some resistance. We're going to have to work a bit harder. But we want to ensure that there's a way for engineers to have bigger impact. So tech debt and refactoring, and having the perfect code isn't everything that we have to do. And I think that when it comes to the psyche of the engineer, we can place each and every one of us on some sort of a continuum. On one end of the continuum, the tech-focused continuum, we've got the engineers, you're going to raise your hands in a second, the engineer that says, I don't care if this code is going to kill grannies as long as I'm doing AI models in Rust. All right, there's those. All the way on the other hand of the spectrum, we have the engineers who say, I care about what this is doing. So I'm willing to write assembly code and connect to mainframes if that means that we're going to achieve what the company is aiming for, if we're going to help our users do whatever our users need to do. And I believe that especially since COVID, the balance here has been so that more and more engineers are moving and drifting towards the tech end of the spectrum. I believe a healthy company needs a combination of everyone, but let's just try during this few minutes that we have to shift things a bit more towards the product end of the spectrum. So we're not just thinking about whatever shiny new thing we saw on the top of Hacker News, but what can we actually do for the company, for the product? So we're not just focusing on cutting on tech debt. And the problem with focusing on tech debt is that there's a limit to how much you can effectively cut. So if that becomes everything you're looking for, you're going to miss out on a lot of other opportunities. It's like the person that decides to start saving on money, so they stop drinking cappuccinos outside. They cut it from 3 a day to 2 a day to 1 a day. At the end of the day, you're no longer drinking good cappuccinos and you're saving a few euros a day. That's it. There's a limit to how much value you can get out of that. And we have the same thinking here. We can't just focus on cutting more and more and more tech debt because at a point, it no longer makes sense. So what are you striving for? And if we go back a few slides and you remember, I asked so many tech leaders, and they're just focused on getting this done, doing some tech debt, and that's it, we're going to miss out on what we can really do. So how do we get there? First of all, for some reason, my notes are up here, so you're going to live with that. Anyway, so am I saying that tech debt is good? Of course not. I was afraid of getting mobbed. This is not the case. I don't like tech debt. No one likes tech debt, right? That's not the case. But I'm guessing you've all realized we're not going to have 100% code coverage. We're not going to have 0 bugs all the time. We're not going to have perfect code. I'm hoping you're past the stage where you want to ensure that every single file has at least one design pattern, and everything is laid out so that it shows how clever you are, right? We're past that. So if we understand that, how do we get to the right point where we view things from, if we look at the spectrum, from that point of people who think about the product and not just about creating tech that's going to look amazing on the company's engineering blog? And the story I'm referring to here is a few years ago, I was helping a company that had a text chat app, something like WhatsApp. And they had millions of users, hundreds of millions of messages. We were helping them move from one back-end solution that was really incapable of doing the new features they wanted to a new one. And I remember we talked to the CTO. We said, all right, we can do the shortest amount of time, least amount of work. We're going to write the new system. We're going to tell to the users, hey, site is under construction, under maintenance for a day, and then be back up with the new system. It's a go, right? That's one end of the spectrum. All the way on the other hand, you have the Twitter-like migration where we have 2 systems running together. Messages are being written and read everywhere. We're checking it live, and after weeks of checking everything and making sure that the 2 databases are in sync, we make the cut. No one ever knows, right? There's a spectrum here when we don't have to choose one of the edges, but I'm guessing you're getting what I'm saying. And the CTO looked at it and like, I don't know, 3 seconds, said, no, here we do things the right way. So we ended up with a solution that was almost all the way to the trader-like migration for a small startup. And I remember, action shot, sorry. And I remember, after we finished it, 3 months later, we were celebrating. I brought in special bottles of wine with a label I made to celebrate it. And I was talking to the co-founders, and I said, you know, it's really striking that you decided to make this trade-off. You know what they said? There's this gif of the person who, I think it's from The Mask, where the jaw just drops to the floor. They're like, we spent an extra 2 months of that? Who cares? We would have deleted the data, told them to just back up if there's anything important, and restore later if they want it. Who cares? We needed to have something at the door way faster than we did. We don't have any more money left. What is going on? And I'm guessing you're not that extreme in what you're doing, but what that CTO had is something that so many people have nowadays. We are focused on the wrong thing, and we might not feel like we're dogmatic. We might feel like, no, we're just being pragmatic. We're doing the right things, but it's so easy to lose sight of what's really important, especially if you're too much towards the tech end of the spectrum and you're missing out on what you can actually do, about what's actually important for the company. And now comes the question of how can we start moving ourselves in the right direction? We need to start thinking about creating real value, about not just writing perfect code, but about noticing when tech debt is something that actually needs to be managed. Someone yesterday here told me that if you have tech debt that's stopping you from making work, that's not tech debt. That's part of a feature that you need to write. But if you're just sitting down and handling tech debt that no one's going to touch that code for months, then who cares? Why do we care about that? That's not creating value. We might have nicer, I don't know, code metrics on our repo, but that's it. We want to move to a world where we actually move the needle. That's the subtitle of my book. And provide real, massive value. And if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're moving on. We're not just aiming to do the basic. We're now going for Aviv's hierarchy of wins. We're going to start with tech capital, move to innovation, and eventually, if you listen really well, at the end of this talk, you'll all be focused on impact. So, number one is tech capital. If you see what I'm doing, I just turn it the other way around. We're not thinking about debt. We're going to start amassing capital. You haven't heard about it. I made up the term. And what it means is not more features, because features are kind of like a new car. It's very shiny the first second, and then it starts depreciating in value immediately, and you have to keep maintaining it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about creating something that enables new things for the entire company. So an example all of you know is investing in engineering velocity. We spend some time to make the build faster, to ensure that deploys are easier or less error-prone, right? We just wrote some code, or we set something up that is paying dividends every day if we're going with the capital thing a bit longer. We're actually making sure that we work better, that we have more time, that we have less bugs. That's one way, and that's actually something that many engineers already are doing. The question is, what are other kinds of tech capital? So another example would be the company that had engineers realize that for some reason, marketing keeps coming to them and saying, we need you to change that email. We want to have a new email here, or can you make that push notification go there? Why? Because they wanted to do what good marketing people do, and that's iterate on a bunch of things to see what's actually working. And the engineers were a huge bottleneck, and the tasks, of course, are not really using themselves to their genius zone. They're just focused on, let's move that email over there, add an image here, make sure it looks good on phones, whatever. And I've worked in the past 2 years with like 5 companies that said, hey, while we're doing that, let's create an editor or use a third-party tool so marketing can do 85% of these requests by their own. And all of a sudden, marketing, they like have a new, Mario, right? They eat the flower, and now they have a new capability. They can do stuff on their own. This is tech capital. we're giving someone else another superpower, or not a superpower, a small power. It still has an effect. And one last example of tech capital that I really, really like, I was working with a company where the sales force, the people making sales, were actually going by a specific geographical location and finding leads and going there. And the data scientist happened to see this, realize how things were operating, and said, give me a day to do something. Of course, engineering said one day, it was 2 days, but still, came back 2 days later with this web app that wasn't sexy or shiny, but it had a map that allowed the salespeople all of a sudden to filter and see clusters of location based on a bunch of open data, from the New York municipality and everything you can find online. And all of a sudden, those salespeople could do things so much faster. They didn't even know that they can say, hey, let's find a neighborhood that has a higher percentage of really good possibility for closing a deal and go there first. And you know that gif of the person going like, mind-blown thing? That's how they looked. And they had no way of even thinking about asking something like this, right? This is real tech capital. This is something where engineers can do something that's almost like magic. No one can ask you for it, like that not Harrison, like that Ford quote where you say, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me we wanted faster horses. We don't want faster horses, we want a car. People can't imagine this. They're getting stuck within how they know how to do things. And we want to start creating tech capital. Amassing tech capital is the next stage. And the question is, how do we do that? So step number one, if you noticed in the last story, I said the data scientists saw how the salespeople were working. We need to adopt a mindset where we say that coders are not limited solely to helping the users directly, not just doing whatever products say, we have to do this right now to deliver another feature. We want to create coders without borders, coders that can help everyone within the company, because with some coding magic, you can have so much impact throughout the entire company. I'm guessing some of you already are doing this, but it is something that even when it's done, I see so many companies where it's done under the table. People don't want anyone to know that they're helping the marketing or the salespeople. No, let's make this something that's actually expected, something that's awesome. Another very tactical way to ensure that you get some more tech capital is to look up some of the new amazing capabilities that I'm seeing in low-code and no-code tools. I'm not saying let's use those to deliver value to our clients. I don't think most of these are ready for that yet. But when it comes to internal tools, it's like magic, because I see people do in 2 hours what would otherwise take them 2 or 3 days to do. And it's enough for a POC that helps people around in the company and to spot where this actually pays off to keep investing in. Again, not tech debt, we're creating value. And after we have that layer of the hierarchy of wins, we want to move up to innovation. And I don't know if you know the terms cost centers or innovation centers, but R&D, engineering, in many, many companies, in many startups, is actually looked at as a cost center. It's a cost of doing business. If we could have done everything the same and not have all of those as pricey engineers, we would have told them to go somewhere else a long time ago. And that's because we were just delivering the very basic that's needed. The question is, how do we make innovation something that actually happens throughout the life cycle of the company? The first step is to make real time for innovation. We need to have real wiggle room. I'm guessing all of you have this very fun hackathon once or twice a year, and my problem is I say that hackathons are a hack, because we're telling everyone, you get to be creative 2 days a year and that's it. Shut up the rest of the year. That's what I'm seeing. You can't actually think outside of the box. So if you had a good idea, but you just finished a hackathon 3 weeks ago, stay silent for another 5 months at least. And that's not really making wiggle room for innovation. So we need to ensure that we are not allocating 100% of our time to churning out product tickets. And that's easier than you might think, because if you start saying, I'm going to fill up every little time that I get to do another refactoring, to chip away a bit more at the tech debt, all of a sudden we get a lot of time. I'm seeing many companies that actually, from the get-go, have like 30% of all work days assigned to tech debt and engineering velocity. Let's take that to something that's like innovation. But how do we do that? One concept is intermissions. If you know 37 Signals or Basecamp, they call it sabbaticals, I think. But the concept is, rather than have one hackathon once or twice a year, we say that every X amount of sprints, and you can start with an X that's relatively high and then get lower with time as you see the benefits, we have an intermission. We have a week where the entire team is working together on actually innovating, on doing something that's very special. And of course, if you just tell engineers you have a week to do stuff, it becomes a tech debt fiesta. That's what we do. So you need to ensure that people actually have experiments that are real innovation, things that are actually tech capital. I've got a very nice checklist and a bunch of examples to help people realize what we should be doing, what shouldn't we be doing, and you can get that as part of the free sample chapter from my book that talks exactly about the mechanics of this. I don't want to go into all of this. You get the link at the end. But we need to make time for teams to actually, together, think about these innovative ideas. And I know that intermissions are being really well integrated when I see companies where the salespeople or the marketing people know that an intermission is coming, and they start looking for an engineer to champion one of their ideas. And they say, hey, can you help us with that? We have this thing going on. Because we have Coders Without Borders, because everyone knows that we're going to have an intermission relatively, one is also always relatively in the near term, we're going to have some room for innovation, and people want to do that. And lastly, if you want to be really innovative, you have to embrace failure. Sometimes when I start intermissions at a company, I'm getting people who try to ensure that every idea that we're going to work on during that week is guaranteed to be a bonanza. Everything's going to work. The problem with that is that it means we're not really innovating. Actually, when I talk to a CTO that tells me, my R&D team is perfect, we deliver 100% of the roadmap quarter after quarter after quarter, I usually say that usually means that you just have so many buffers, you're never going to get anything wrong. It doesn't mean you guys are doing things right. And if we want to have real innovation, we have to ensure that people take the right sorts of bets. So we're not going to start mining out, minting NFTs because it's cool if it doesn't have any real business impact, even if it works. But whatever we do end up trying is something that we say, this is a bet worth taking. If it works out, it's going to have a good impact. If it doesn't work out during that week, we always have another intermission in the distance. So focus on that. And that's how we should be thinking about innovation. There's a lot to say about this. Again, it's all in the sample chapter. But once we have people understanding what tech capital means, and we start noticing it, it's like when you're in the market for, I don't know, a new car, you start noticing the cars around you all the time. If we talk to people about tech capital, you start seeing where we might have chances to make that something that we can do in the next intermission. So we need to have that in mind. We need to have innovation as part of our priorities, making wiggle room, having intermissions, so people can actually try whatever they come up with. And the next step is after we have that, and this is something that I say often happens almost by itself, because if you have good intermissions, if people are creating tech capital, we get real impact because people start feeling agency. I talked earlier about the path of least resistance. After we have been in a point where we delivered on new things, where we constantly deliver capabilities to everyone around the company, engineering is no longer that black box that you throw JIRA tickets at and you get some code later. It becomes something that's a real partner within the company. And that's what I'm striving for. That's what I want to see. I want to see organizations where engineering is actually a tool for delivering impact. Someone that has the figurative seat around the table, someone that is actually listened to. And an example of how I can tell that a company has really reached the peak of the hierarchy of wins actually has impact coming from the tech team. In the past year alone, I worked with 2 companies that didn't actually have the same problem, but both of them weren't really doing SaaS. One was selling on-premise solutions, another was doing SaaS, but in a way that was extremely expensive, everything was single tenant. Both of them ended up being not something that could actually work out in the real world. And by the way, I see that the market now realized that you have to actually create businesses. A year ago, people weren't exactly there already, but the engineers actually saw this and said, this doesn't make any sense. We're going to have to scale up the engineers with the amount of clients we're getting. This isn't high margin sort of software that we're promising our investors. We need to think about something else. And in both those companies, it worked like that. The engineers talked to the team leads talked to the VP of engineering, talked to the CTO, and they ended up getting to a place where the CTO made his case, in this 2 companies, the CTO was male, make their cases to the board about let's move on to something new. We want to create a new type of business model that's real SaaS. And they used their intermissions to come up with new features that were only possible when you have a real SaaS product. They used it to try up some new marketing campaigns with the marketing people to see that there's actual real interest for this sort of stuff. They used their innovation time to try and be really innovative. And then when they came up to the board, they had a real case. It's not just engineers, sitting and complaining and saying this isn't the right thing to do. It's actually coming up as a partner with another approach and selling it. And both companies have made the transition. One of them now doing amazingly well. The other is still ongoing the change because it's quite big, but they're in a much better spot right now had they not changed to this model, especially again with what's happening in the market. So this is impact. And the question is, if you have people doing tech capital, if you have people starting to create innovation regularly, what does it take to tip you all the way up to impact? And there are 2 things that I always tell my clients they need to ensure that they see regularly. One is product mastery. Engineers know how to focus on their tech mastery. You have a bunch of talks here today about becoming better at your actual work. The question is, how do you make sure that the engineers actually understand the product they're working on? We want to have healthy friction so that engineers, for example, you regularly talk to people throughout the company. They understand the business. They see what customers are saying. I have companies where they record all of the sales conversations, and then they play back interesting bits as sort of an internal podcast to the engineers, to everyone actually in the company. And all of a sudden, you can hear what people are actually saying about your product, about the work you're doing, how the features are really viewed. Some companies I work with sometimes have people work or shadow customer success like half a day every quarter, so you can see what is really on your users' minds, how they view the different features you created. You create this connection, and then you slowly get a good transition in your shower thoughts. I don't know what you're thinking about, but shower thoughts is like you're in the shower, you're disconnected from all of the screens, no one can interrupt you, I'm hoping, and you're gonna get an idea, right? All of a sudden, you just solved a bug. You have a new idea. And I say that a company is drifting more towards the product end of the tech product spectrum when it becomes more and more often that engineers have shower thoughts that are about innovation, about tech capital. And that only happens with real product mastery. When we understand our users, we understand what they want. We're not just churning out tickets. And lastly, and this might be harder, I'm coming from Israel. It's, in the Israeli army, you can tell your commander and their commander and so on that they're doing something wrong. We speak up. I see many, many companies where that's not part of the culture. Everyone can see that not working in SaaS isn't making sense, but no one is actually saying that. So we want to create a real culture of speaking up, where it's okay to say what's on our mind, even if you're wrong, even if it's going to annoy someone. I'm not saying piss people off on purpose. If you used to see House MD, right? I'm not talking about that, the person that everyone hates, even if they're correct. But I'm talking about really, again, saying it what's on our minds. When we see an issue, we go to the right person and say how we think things can improve. And to do that, we have to ensure that we don't shut down ideas immediately. We don't shoot the messenger. We let people talk. And whenever someone actually says something worthwhile, I always say, put them on a pedestal. Even if you don't agree with what they said, make sure that everyone sees that you really value that feedback. Because if we shut up, or if we say, yeah, and whatever, and move on, people are going to stop talking. And that's, I know this is very much in the soft skills area, but this is what enables really special and unique sorts of companies. Companies where engineers can deliver real impact, move the needle, and at the end of the day, look back on whatever you're doing right now in 10 years, for example, and feel like, I actually did something worthwhile. It really mattered that I got to the office day to day, as opposed to feeling like you were just another cog in the machine. We want to create tech organizations that move the needle and move towards somewhere where you usually regularly have innovation, have tech capital, and drive real meaning. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aviv. You caught me by surprise because you are on time. Can we do the slider? Do we have questions?
In the meantime, if you want to get a sample chapter, no, sorry, you have to be quicker. If you want to get a sample chapter, you can see the link over there.
Here's your booze. Paid for by the sponsors. Okay, hang on, where were the questions? Here are the questions. Okay, Aviv, I'm going to ask them, you're going to answer them. Okay? How do you handle innovation ideas that require several intermissions before you can prove business value? Expensive idea, lots of work till testable product.
Yeah, well, the answer, of course, is annoying. You have to think about how can you start chunking it up. I usually try and find something that delivers some value or proves part of the bigger concept really fast within that week. And then, if we see that there's a nugget of real value here, then we sometimes actually get product to say, you just proved that this is worthwhile, and it just becomes part of the real roadmap. So we don't have to wait another 3-4 sprints for the next intermission. That's hopefully what we want to see.
Amazing. Next question, also from Anonymous. How do you see the role of product managers in an organization?
Well, the people who have to really understand the users, really be in charge of the roadmap when it comes to the big vision, and help make sure that what we're doing drives impact. What I'm talking about, for example, where we have a difference here is between the, for example, there's an echo. For example, the value that we're providing in-house to other people in the companies, that's often not what product managers are thinking of, and real innovation for the users, that's often what's coming from product.
Anonymous again. How do you communicate to the business that the devs are not working on anything useful?
Fire them. It has to be useful. What do you mean? I just said, when we're doing intermissions, everything has to be a bet that's something that makes sense to do. So hopefully, after an intermission, even if not everything is a success, something is worthwhile. The sum of everything has to be so that these weeks pay off. We deliver on something valuable almost every intermission. If we have a small team, or if we have a big team, then every intermission, someone actually made something meaningful, and that should pay off. We're aiming high, so the innovation is real innovation, and it should actually deliver a lot of value, even if some people fail.
It's very brave to come in front of all of these people and say, fire all the devs. Well done. Next question from Alex is, no, Anonymous again. Alex, we'll get to yours. We have plenty of time. Anonymous, do we really need roadmaps? As a marketer, I can say yes. What is marketing going to say is on the roadmap without one? But Aviv, please answer.
Well, this is very biased, and I always say that you have to tailor what you do to the company. But generally, I'm not for fighting a fight that you're not going to win. So if the CEO, if the board, if everyone around want to see a roadmap because they have to do things like sell to other companies, say what you're going to be doing, raise more money, then yeah, roadmaps are valuable merely for that. Just ensure that roadmaps don't turn into, again, being a JIRA resolution machine.
Yeah, be nice to the marketing team. Alex asks, is there a feasible way to prioritize? How Alex has got these weird quotation marks is amazing. Is there a feasible way to prioritize bottom line and top line tech work, or is it just leaving slack for innovation the most effective approach?
Well, I think leaving slack is something that's a very good first step because it's a lot easier than trying to prioritize things, especially if the engineers are not thinking about product from a product from a product point of view still, or don't have all the product mastery and all of the connections within the company to start amassing real tech capital. So I start with that. Sometimes we actually have backlogs for intermissions, but that often takes a while till we see what's actually working in the company.
Next up, Anonymous says, love the talk, want to give you a hug, but then adds this smiling emoji, which I don't know if that's sarcasm.
No.
No, it's not sarcasm. It's joy. We need more product-oriented developers, big smiley face. Aviv, are you accepting hugs?
Yeah.
He is. All 5
I'll
people.
be here for 5 minutes.
All 5 people who like that, I expect to see you form a queue over here. Right, you're all vaccinated, yeah? Okay. Next question. Christy says, how do you approach low/no-code MVPs that strike value and need to be scaled up?
That's a very good problem to have. You actually just show that there's value in what you're doing. That's often a lot easier to sell as something that we're going to put on the roadmap and turn into a real part of the code, if that makes sense. That's something that I see repeatedly. We have a bunch of low-code, no-code things. Let's say, out of every 5, 1 becomes a real stellar success that really helps within the company, and we start moving that into something that's part of our real infrastructure internally.
Thank you, Christy. Next one from Anonymous again. But the technical debt will not fire up in the end, and everyone will be disgusted because we have spaghetti code.
Well, spaghetti tastes good, but as I said in the beginning, you have to address tech debt. If it becomes tech debt that's making you really slower, that's stopping you from delivering certain features, that it's not just tech debt, it's actually a problem that we will benefit from tackling. So sometimes in an intermission, someone might say, we're going to refactor this because we think it's going to make us really faster on our day-to-day. I'm fine with that. I just have a beef with tech debt where we make all of the classes look like the new way we're doing classes, even though no one's going to touch that code in the next year. That's my problem.
Next up, how to talk to product management. How can you talk to product? Do you need to talk to product management? I guess you do. How to talk to product management so we can have intermission once a month.
Once a month, by the way, I think is a bit too much, especially if you're just starting. I aim to have an intermission about every 7-8 weeks at the beginning. Once we get that value, you're golden, and people might actually want more. But even getting those 7 to 8 once every 7-8 weeks means that you have to make a real case for it. We're going to focus less on tech debt ongoingly. We're going to say that we need less time every single day to do that, so people might actually see that you're not just saying, give me, give me, give me. This is a real negotiation, and you're going to get something done. But this is really something that has to be taken care of, usually at the higher levels. You need to sell this to your VP of engineering, to your CTO, and make them do the fighting for you. That's what they're getting paid for.
Okay, we don't have time for any more questions. Huge round of applause for Aviv.